First of all, I'd like to congratulate the Pittsburgh Penguins. Obviously, the Stanley Cup is the hardest trophy to win in all major sports, 4 7-game series, and the fact that they've done this 2 years in a row speaks volumes to how great their team is, their coaching staff, their management. It's just so I congratulate the Penguins on a fantastic 2 years winning the Stanley Cup. Secondly, I'd like to thank our fans and our community for this magical playoff run. It ended two wins short of our ultimate goal, but I have never, ever been part of something as special as what we just went through as a general manager of the team, as a citizen of Nashville. What took place on the ice, off the ice, has never been seen before. This, in my mind, was the most exciting playoff Stanley Cups in the history of the National Hockey League, and it happened right here in Nashville, Tennessee, and it was participated in by all of our community, from the Titans to hospitals, charities that we work with, fans, the mayor. Everybody was part of this playoff run, and it just feels so good to be not only the general manager of the Nashville Predators, but to be a citizen of Nashville, Tennessee. The whole run was magical, and what took place was totally unique, and in a lot of ways I think it'll be tried at least to be copied by other teams in the future, both in hockey and probably in other sports. Thirdly, I'd like to thank you, the media. Your coverage this year has been unbelievable, and especially in the playoffs. Special shows from radio and television, newspapers, they all told news stories, great stories, reached out for us to all sorts of new fans, and for that we thank you very much. On our business side, led by our CEO, Sean Henry, I thank them first of all for all their support and their effort. Their creativity in our game presentation, how our building looks, how our game presentation comes across to our fans, to our community, obviously on television, is second to none, and again, probably the envy of many, many teams in the National Hockey League and probably in other sports. Sean has done a phenomenal job to take us to a level that no team has ever been before in terms of all the, I guess you'd say, the visuals. We're in the entertainment business, and Bridgestone Arena, led by Sean Henry, is number one in that area. I'm very proud of our organization and our community for what happened here in this playoff run. The NHL, has a lot of special events, but recently Nashville's participated, in my mind, in some, if not the best events. The 2016 All-Star Game, to me, set new standards of how All-Star games should be participated in, both on and off the ice, with a 3-on-3 format, and then all of the entertainment and fan participation surrounding the All-Star Game. And then you go to the next step, where we hosted 3 Stanley Cup finals here in Smashville. To me, it was like having 3 Super Bowls in one week, with 50,000 people outside the building and 17,000 people inside the building. It was special concerts by Alan Jackson, Luke Bryant. I mean, I hope I can keep these memories forever. It just was, every moment was so special, and it was so unique. So having said that, in about 3 weeks, I'll be celebrating my 20th anniversary here in Nashville, and I think it's pretty fair to say that we're no longer an expansion team. We're no longer a non-traditional hockey market. We have a team that competes for the Stanley Cup, and we have a franchise that, in my mind, is as good as any in the hockey world. Okay, on the hockey side, it's a little raw here after a couple of days where we fell two wins short of winning our ultimate goal. But I'm very proud of our group, and our group is not only our players, but it's our scouting staff, and it's Milwaukee and our coaching staff up there with Dean Evison. As I said to Lavi and the players yesterday, from my perspective, when I end a year, what have you, and I'm talking to the players, everybody, if I can look everybody in the eye and tell them that they made a contribution I don't think there's anything more that I can ask. And that's exactly what happened. Our coaching staff, led by Peter, was unbelievable in terms of their game plan, motivation. Again, I say the Milwaukee farm system that we have, the players that we had coming up, led by Dean Evison, the coach down there, it was so important to our success. Our players gave everything they had. We dealt with and overcame adversity. When Kevin Fiala went down in the St. Louis series, we found a way to come back. When Ryan Johansson went down in the Anaheim series, we found a way to beat them and advance to the Stanley Cup Finals. Our players were awesome. They conducted themselves with character, class, and dignity throughout the whole playoffs. I've never been more proud of a group than these guys. As I say, every season we enter with probably only one goal in mind, and that's to make the playoffs. And the next goal would be to win the first round, to win the second round, to win the third round, and get to the finals. So in my calculation, we hit 4 of our 5 goals, and we're just 2 games short of the ultimate goal. We won 14 playoff games this year, which is 7 more than we've ever won before. We won 3 playoff series. We never had home ice advantage. And we didn't face elimination until our 22nd game. I said earlier about contributions. I mean, probably this is the first year that we had the proper amount of depth to have a long playoff run, and it was certainly typified by what happened. I mean, as I said earlier, every player made a contribution. I mean, we pick up Vern Fiddler in a trade, and he scores a game-winning goal in St. Louis. We get Cody McLeod in a trade, and he gets the game-winning goal in St. Louis. You know, Pontus Aberg has hardly played any games in the NHL. He comes in to play regular in the playoffs, and he scores a game-winning goal in Anaheim. Colton Sissons, who wasn't even dressed in 7 straight games, I think back in February, gets a hat trick against Anaheim. Freddie Gaudreau, who's never scored a goal in the NHL, comes up and gets game-winning goals in the playoffs. I mean, that's what a magical run is all about. I think lastly on our players, I just can't say enough about our leadership, starting with our captain, Mike Fisher, Roman Josi, Ryan Ellis, James Neal, and Pekka Rinne. Great job. I think Mike Fisher is a natural leader. As I said when we named him captain, he could have been a captain for many, many years, whether it had been here or in Ottawa, but there was always somebody in his place. But this guy is all those things you want to say. The great pro, great role model, and he's been an outstanding captain for us this season. Looking forward, I really, really like our team. I like our goaltending. I like our defensive core. I think it's as good as any in the league, and I think our forwards are getting better and better, and led by young, flashy offensive stars like Forsberg, Arvidsson, and Ryan Johansson. Lots going on as we enter this short off season. Because first of all, on injuries, don't have a complete update, but just to go through a few situations. As you know, the playoffs is war, and there's a lot of things going on. On Ryan Johansson, we expect a complete recovery on Ryan. He's ahead of schedule. If you've seen him, he's walking without crutches. I think he's probably going to get the clearance actually to start working out on a more regular basis in 2 or 3 weeks. Kevin Fiala has been unbelievable in terms of how hard he has worked. Doctor's never seen anybody so far ahead of schedule. So the bottom line is I think both those guys will be fine by the time we get to training camp. Craig Smith missed a lot of games in the playoffs. It was due to a high ankle sprain. He tried coming back that once, and then he re-injured it. Colin Wilson was out with a hamstring issue that bothered him for a long, long time. James Neal was a really interesting story. I mean, he broke his wrist in Game 1 of the Anaheim series. I'm sure that doesn't surprise anybody. His hand, his hand, I should say that. And I don't know how many, if you're watching every day, but in practice, he never shot a puck in practice since that happened, and he had to get it shot up every game just to be able to play. I mean, I think these are the stories that make hockey players, I guess, a little bit different, and obviously we really appreciate all the players playing through their injuries, and somebody like with James Neal in the lineup, and under normal circumstances nobody would have played with a broken hand, but he did, and I commend that. Other things of note, the salary cap, which is of great importance to all of us, starting with Las Vegas. We're supposed to have that soon, no later than Friday. There's been talk that because of current economics that could be flat. The most it can go up is 5%. The Players Association controls that. They have this escalator, so we'll see where that goes, but that's an important number for all of us. The expansion draft, we are working on that right now in terms of finalizing our list. It must be submitted to the NHL and then to Las Vegas by Saturday afternoon, and then the expansion draft will be done in Las Vegas on Wednesday. There's a Board of Governors meeting in Las Vegas next week, which we'll go to. Then we're off to Chicago for the entry draft, which is a week Friday and Saturday. We come right back home to Nashville to have our development camp, which is the players come in that Sunday, and it's going to be Monday through Friday with a inter-squad game on Friday afternoon or Friday evening at Ford Ice Center. So you could see all of our younger prospects at that time, and a lot of guys that we draft this week in Chicago. Free agency starts on July 1st. On the contract front, we have a few contracts to do. The most notable are Ryan Johansson and Victor Arvidsson. Both are restricted free agents. We will meet with, we'll have the same agent. We'll meet with him or them in Chicago to start that process next week. Good news is we signed Yannick Weber to a one-year extension yesterday, and so we have our defense core in place for next year. And I think that's about all I have. So again, thank you on behalf of all of the hockey ops people for what you guys did this year. Was just a very enjoyable, fantastic year to share with everybody. Thank you.
If you want to raise your hand, pass you the mic for questions. Sean?
David, I wonder both in terms of sort of the notoriety that Nashville got here in the hockey world, and also, maybe possibly in terms of the revenue gained in this playoff run too. I wonder if this could potentially help you down the road in terms of free agents that want to come here or re-signing players, et cetera. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
I would absolutely think it does. I mean, to me, the last 2 or 3 years have been the best in our franchise. And again, I referred to the 16 All-Star game. I think that in a lot of ways put us on the map more internationally with a lot of folks that got to watch the game and see all the festivities, all the media that came to town for the great time that they had. All that really helps, and they all report on that. They all say how great Nashville is. Again, on and off the ice. The more you win, I think the more attractive your team is to players, either to stay here or for free agents. The fact that our building is now full on a nightly basis, there's not a player that doesn't think this is as good a place, if not the best place to play in the National Hockey League right now. As far as resources, with the new ownership that came in now 7 years ago, they have given me everything I need to put a competitive team on the ice. I don't think we have any of those, what I'll refer to as old issues about our franchise in terms of from the extreme of losing a player to moving, all those things. I think that is way in the past tense, and I feel I've never felt better about our franchise than I do today.
Adam?
David, you mentioned with the short postseason, you already have to start planning for the expansion draft. I was wondering if you can go into some more detail about that, specifically the way the roster is constructed. Do you plan on using the 8 skater protection method, and what specific decisions do you have left to make as a group before you have to turn that list in?
Well, I'd like to actually, and you talk about the short period of time, I want to sit down with the coaching staff probably as soon as this afternoon to go over what we're thinking, because I mean, we've talked about it, but haven't shared too much of the philosophy, going forward. So we need a little bit of internal time before we make our final decisions. It's going to be tough, I think, whatever we do. I think we're one of the teams that is going to give up one of the better players in expansion. I've also made a call. I've talked to George McPhee the day before yesterday, and I'm going to talk to him again tomorrow just to see if I can see what he might be looking for, and to see whether there might be a deal that we could make to satisfy both of us. So, it's the cost of doing business. We've been on the other end of getting an expansion team. I'm happy for Vegas to some extent that they're, all due respect, probably getting better players than we did to start with, and we will do the best we can to protect as many assets as we can.
Chair?
There's a lot of talk about Mike Fisher not coming back and retiring, and if that's the case, the younger guys, the Yossi's, the Ellises, who have now been through this for a couple of years, what kind of leaders have they developed into if you do have to make another change with another captain going forward?
Let me go first. First of all, we haven't, just for the record, we haven't talked to Mike Fisher yet, and obviously I'd like to give him as much time as he needs to make a decision. So that's A, and then let Lavi talk about the leadership on our team.
I think the leadership was excellent this year. David had mentioned in his opening remarks how fortunate we are to have great leaders in the room. It was certainly led by Mike Fisher. When we were early in the season, we were trying to figure out how we were going to be built as a team. Never once was it about Mike and his leadership. That was an easy fit, and it was such a big part of him becoming the captain this year, because he's the guy that could step into shoes and be the leader that we needed inside the locker room. I think it was the younger players now in those leadership roles. We added Ryan Ellis. We thought the way he came into the season and what he was contributing inside the locker room and on the ice, we thought it was important to bring him into the leadership group as an assistant captain. Roman Yossi now has been an assistant captain for a couple years here. James Neal's an excellent leader. He's been a guy that we've counted on because he's got a little bit more experience. So the leadership group was very good. Even players that not necessarily are in the names that we've just talked about, but watching the maturity and the growth of a guy like Ryan Johansson, Philip Forsberg, Matthias Ekholm, and there's more. But there was growth, I think, from a leadership point of view inside of our room, outside of the name of Mike Fisher, who did an outstanding job.
Justin in the back.
This is for David. David, so many of the players that have made such a significant impact on the team this season were skipped over in drafts or drafted in the mid-late rounds, like Victor Arvidsson, Pecorini, things like that. What does it say just about your staff, your scouting staff and staff throughout the entire organization to find these diamonds in the rough, to be able to develop these guys as well and find them to make an impact on the team?
Well, our scouting staff has done a fantastic job right from day one. Our lifeblood of our team has always been through our scouting, and specifically, and I'd say mostly, our amateur scouting, led by Paul Fenton, our assistant GM, and Jeff Kelty, who's been the head amateur scout for many, many years now. And it's, to have any success, you have to have that. And these guys have found players, I don't want to say it's easy in the first round, but when you find players in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, Pecorini in the 8th round, which we don't even have anymore, these are great stories, and they keep coming. Freddie Gaudreau wasn't even drafted, so he was a free agent. So this is Paul, this is Jeff, this is Tommy Nolan, and JP Glode, who's our regional scout that we have in Quebec. And these guys know players, and they know what we need. And I can't tell you how good of a job they've done, and I can't tell you how important it is to be able to have these depth type of players to be able to come in, because in a salary cap age, you sort of get a formula and you pay your top players so much money, and you got to have these entry-level guys or lower-end guys coming into fresh blood, if you will, into your lineup all the time. So, we see Kevin Fiala making it, looks like, on a regular basis, hopefully next year. Pontus Aberg is a guy that's got a chance to make it on a regular basis. These are draft picks. Freddie Gaudreau is a free agent. Paul really has liked Matt Irwin for years. Matt Irwin, a year ago, played the whole year in the minors. And this year, all but one game, he plays the whole year in the National Hockey League. That's great player evaluation. And Paul and his staff have done a fantastic job for us. And another reason why we're here today, I referred earlier to Milwaukee. We have this saying within the organization, the road to Nashville is through Milwaukee, and it couldn't be any more truer than what happened this year.
Peter, you've been through this before. What have you told the players in terms of how you want them to handle the short off season now in terms of balancing rest versus training on their own? And then does it affect what you do at the start of training camp too?
You know, we're wrapping things up as a team and in individual meetings right now. The message is never easy when you don't complete what you started, and we fell short. So there's always going to be a disappointment and a hole. The one thing we always said is that we didn't want to look back with any regret. We have none for the way that we played. Our guys played their hearts out, and we fell short at the end. So I think that more than anything, there's a pit there. There's an emptiness of not getting all the way. You know, with regard to the summer, it is short. There's no question about that. We're still dealing with guys that are banged up and unable to train at full right now. Not that they would. They need a little bit of time off, but that time maybe in some years is a month. Now it's much shorter than that. It might be 2 weeks. It might be 10 days, 14 days, 21 days, and they've got to get back at it because it is quick. Their bodies are their engines, and they have to pay attention to the detail of what they do in the summer in order to be ready to play at a high pace and be physically ready for the demands of the season, which will come quickly next year. So we've had some talks about that. We've got excellent people in place with regard to looking after that. Andy Hostler and his staff, the medical staff. David Good does an unbelievable job training our players, and we've got Marietta does a terrific job as a nutritionist, and these guys will get what they need this summer in order for our guys to be ready when they come back to training camp. So right now we're still wrapping it up, and we're still dealing with some injuries that, you know, we're not even sure about at this point, and we're moving forward from there. But I think the time off will help. A short break will help, but at some point they're going to have to turn it over and start getting themselves ready for next year.
David, you alluded to the All-Star game and then what the playoffs brought. What do you think that will mean for this franchise in terms of national television games and possible outdoor games and other NHL events going forward?
Well, starting with Sean Henry and our ownership, will be lobbying the league for all those things. I mean, we want to be as big a player as we can in the league and have a positive effect on the league. Selfishly, and I think deservedly so, I think we should be getting more national TV games. I mean, there's always been talk about an outdoor game, and even Gary Bettman brought that up in one of his comments that maybe Nashville was more deserving of a game. I don't think there's anything to it at the moment, but I don't see why we shouldn't move towards all of those things. Whatever the NHL is doing, whatever the most important things are in the NHL in terms of exposure, we will do everything we can to make sure that Nashville is right there in the forefront.
Chris in the back.
Peter, just as a competitor, as the next couple of months go on, you sit more and reflect about the series and the season. Just I wonder if you could say that early whistle in the last game, how much will that stick in your craw and kind of define how this series ended for you?
You know, those things are tough. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was thinking back to 2006 when we won a championship in Carolina, and I thought about some of the things that have to go your way in order to be successful at the end. And two of the things that stuck out for me were just the breaks and the bounces and the call or whatever it might be. Those bounces, you know, while you have a game plan in place and you train all year and you do things, a break and a bounce or something that's timely inside of a series, any series, a final series, I think those things always can move things one way or the other. The other one was health and not sustaining major injuries. And if you know, we had guys that had to come out of the lineup for maybe a week or 10 days, but they would be able to come back. And I think the two injuries that we sustained to Ryan Johansson and Kevin Fiala, those were season-ending injuries. They were going to be 4 months, and no sign and no chance of these guys coming back. So, like I said, our guys played hard. We have no regrets. We're disappointed about the outcome, and it's a tough thing because everybody was dialed in to win a championship. Everybody, I mean our guys, the city, the fans. It's just, I think from that point, I think that's why I started off and said that there's an emptiness in your stomach. You wake up and we were down a road, everybody was dialed in, and now it's over. So that's always disappointing.
Chris, if I could answer a little bit more. I mean, as a general manager, we change and make rules in the National Hockey League. I mean, I'm very disappointed and frustrated at what happened in Game 6 with the goal that wasn't allowed. I'm disappointed that the system doesn't allow it. We as managers, somewhat of the gatekeepers of the game, we've got to put in place a system where the right call is always made. Everybody knows that the goal should have counted, but the system was not there to allow the goal to be counted. And I will do everything I can to try to help that. It's past tense now for the Predators, but going forward, we always want the right call to be made.
Yeah, I was going to follow up with that. What you thought about that rule in particular, and also the goal that was disallowed in Game 1. Are you comfortable with the way that, for both of you, with the way that rule is, and could that or should that be changed in any way?
You can go ahead.
We are trying and I'm speaking as the manager of the Predators, but also as one of the 31 managers in the league. We're trying to do the right thing and to make the right call. Sometimes when you do things, you get unintended consequences. And the video review has, for the most part, been a great addition to our game, has accomplished what we wanted it to do. It's given us the right call almost all the time, but it's not perfect. And the offside in Game 1 was one of those situations. In our opinion, that wasn't offside. But in the league's view, it was offside. How do we get on the same page on that? I mean, that was a 50-50 call, and it didn't go our way. That's very frustrating. And I'm sure it is for our fans, it is for our players, and we've got to keep working to find a system that allows us to, I guess you'll never be perfect, but closer to more to 100% in agreement than just 50-50.
Peter, you kind of made a joke after the Western Conference Final that you made it with 3 teams because other teams fired you. But to have done it now, how is this run different? And are you in any way different at this point of your career, given what you've gone through?
I think it's special. Anytime you get there and you can get to a Final 2, and certainly the ultimate goal is a championship, it's a special thing. It's a special group. It's hard to compare one to the other. I think it wouldn't be right to say this was better than something or that was better than something. I think that every run is special, and your team really has to play well. They have to go through a lot to get to that point, to play for a championship, to be one of the final two teams. For me, I look at it as I've been really fortunate to be in great organizations with great teams and get to a position to be there and play for the cup. I don't really look at it more in a big picture like you're asking. I feel fortunate that David called me a few years ago and asked me to be the coach of the Predators. We have great players inside the room. They are so great to work with on a daily basis. I know you guys see that. I know you see them in the community. Who they are everybody talks about Pekka Rinne, everybody talks about Roman Josi, talks about Mike Fisher, and all of that is 100% true. I get to work with those players on a daily basis, and it's just awesome for me and the coaching staff to have such great character and great pieces in the room that care about each other, care about this organization, care about the city, care about people. And it's been a pleasure to be here. So if you're asking me how I really feel, I feel fortunate and blessed to be in a situation like this where I work with great people on a daily basis.
Teresa in front.
David, have the Buffalo Sabres asked for permission to talk to Phil Housley at this point?
As you know, to stay consistent, we don't discuss what other people might be doing or not doing.
Adam over on the right.
This is a question for both of you. It's sort of hard to believe that I think in 2 weeks from tomorrow was the anniversary of the trade that you made for PK. And I know that it was a calculated risk that you had to make, and it changed the complexion of this franchise a lot. I guess just from both of your perspective, from what you thought you were, what you thought you were going to get when the trade was made to now you had a full season of seeing him, how he works with this team on the ice as a part of this organization in the community. I guess, what are your takeaways from your first year with PK, and is there anything that you saw or that was maybe a pleasant surprise or unexpected from what you thought, what you got when you traded for him?
I think the managers in making a deal is different than the coach. I just mean that my vision almost all the time is a longer vision of where the game is going, what we need. You kind of stagger your contracts. A lot of different situations. So from my perspective, it was a really difficult deal. I mean, I'm probably repeating things I've said all the time. I mean, we weren't looking to trade our captain and Shea Weber, but this opportunity presented itself. And when you look at all the things from how the game is being played, another thing just is very honestly, this is the age difference of almost 4 years. And, I don't mean it exactly this way, but if you're going to stay the same, then you might be getting the same results all the time too. And even though we were tracking, really well by going to the second round a year ago, we still didn't win. And I certainly felt in my mind that trading for PK was a deal that could work out for us in the long run. And I myself felt that this year might be a difficult year. He never asked to be traded. There's going to be lots of big-time transition for him, both on and off the ice. It's going to be a big change for our team, chemistry-wise, culture-wise. I mean, it certainly was a big risk. End result, I think it got better as the season went on. He had to deal with some injuries. It certainly peaked at the end of the year, and he absolutely played his best hockey in the playoffs. And I think the future in terms of his comfort here in Nashville as a player and living here and his contribution on the ice, I think it will only get better. I think he's just hitting the prime of his career. So I feel good with where we are with PK Subban.
From a player standpoint, a coach standpoint, sometimes you see players on the other side, but you don't really get to know them until you get the opportunity to work with them on a daily basis. He was, I thought that he was a very easy person to work with. Very coachable, listens, can take criticism, can take advice. From his game, being in the East and watching him in the East as a coach more, what I remembered was the dynamic offensive player, which I still think he is. I think he's has an excellent shot. I think his passing is incredible. He can make plays, and his offense is something I think that everybody knows about, and probably a reason why one of the reasons that we got him. What I learned more than anything is that I think he's a brilliant defensive player. I think that he is a heavy body. I think that he and Matthias Ekholm as a pair were unbelievable with their size and their strength and their reads, their ability to stop opposition's top lines, their ability to get out of our end, to shield pucks, to make a quick move and an outlet pass and get out of our defensive zone as quick as possible, which is really what the game is about. How can you get it out, get it through, and get it in and stay in the opposition's end? So not only is he good in the offensive end, but we had to get there, and that's where he would really shine for me. And like David said, when he came back from some injury trouble in the middle of the season, his game got stronger and stronger up until the last month where he was, I thought he was lights out, and in the playoffs he really shined. It was almost like his game went to the next level as soon as the playoffs started. And he and Matthias, I thought, were fabulous together.
John in the middle.
David, wondering if I could pile on two quick questions here. One, wonder if you could update us on Ryan Ellis. I clearly seem to be bothered by something in part of the playoffs. And then also, I know at times in the past you've kind of maybe swung for the fences at the trade deadline in the past, also brought in some big names. Wonder if you could talk about taking the sort of the reverse approach this year and maybe some of the benefits that played out by not making the big trade.
On Ryan Ellis, we need a further medical update on him, so hopefully that'll come next week. But you're correct that he has some issues, and we know the extent of it. We'll let you know that. Yeah, I think again you bring up a good point. We talked about that a lot at the trading deadline. We've done from nothing to giving up your first pick. It's really a dynamic that I'm not sure of, because sometimes you just get that great fit, and other times you get no fit at all. Even when you get a really good player and he comes to your team and he doesn't fit in, it doesn't make any sense. And next year he goes to another team and he's back to that same player. I think you got to be really careful at the trading deadline on your chemistry and your culture. And as I say, if your team's playing well, you're going to move somebody's cheese. In this case, this year we didn't do that. We just added the depth players. So I don't think we displaced anybody. We just added depth, and I think that was welcomed by our team. We brought in good guys, good veteran guys that wanted to be here, that were, I guess you could say, low maintenance, but were good teammates, and they jumped in there and did a good job when asked. When they weren't playing on a regular basis, they didn't make any waves, and so it was as good as it could be with our team. So it felt like that. The end result speaks for itself, but it felt like it was the right thing to do this year. Just seemed to fit all the things that we were doing in terms of just adding to the depth. It just gave us a little bit more confidence. So again, if next year we get to the same point, I mean, I don't say we're going to do anything or what have you, but it's not a bad way to do it if you're confident in the core of your team.
This is for both of you guys. With Pontus, and if you do end up re-signing Freddie, are they shoo-ins to immediately make the team next year, or do you have to manage the success that they had in the playoffs, being that they were very successful and maybe they don't start on the active roster right away?
They're young players that are going to come to training camp and do their best to make our team. I don't want to say that a young player coming in is a shoo-in. They're going to have to work hard this summer and come in and earn their spot. I do think that they opened eyes. Certainly Pontus, I think he's in a little bit of a different spot than Freddie, because Pontus was a guy who has gone through a process over the course of a few years where he's been up and down. Every time that Pontus got sent down this year, he was playing well. He didn't get sent back down because he wasn't ready or that he wasn't able to play at this level. We ran into a numbers situation when numbers were counting and you could only keep 23 active on your roster. And when that time comes and somebody comes back from an injury, we have to move somebody back. And that was the conversation every time that Pontus came up here. When the 23-man roster wasn't in place for the playoffs and you could now have extra players, the plan it was always to have Pontus up here because of his speed and his skill, and possibly jump into a series like Chicago because we knew that that's how we had to play. And so each series presented different challenges for the players and for me to make sure that the lineup matched the opposition and what we needed to do in order to be successful. I think one of the toughest conversations that I had was talking to Cody McLeod and telling him that he wasn't going to play in Game 1 in Chicago. This guy is a warrior. He's one of the most loved guys in the locker room. He's an unbelievable teammate, unbelievable energy. we just didn't feel like it's set up for him. And there's no way that we make it to the finals without a guy like Cody McLeod going through St. Louis and Anaheim. So those decisions were tough, and Pontus was always part of that plan to come back up here. And he played very well. He's a guy for me that is right there, and it's up to him now to come to camp. And when he does get in the exhibition games and when he does get those opportunities, that's how we're looking at him now. It's not a slam dunk, though. Young players have to come in and earn their spot, but certainly he opened our eyes by the way he played this year and by the way he played in the playoffs. I think Freddie's a little bit of a different story because what he did is incredible. He's a guy who came up here on a very limited basis. He's an unbelievable kid, a great kid. He works hard every day. He's worked his way to a position where he's in Milwaukee, and his name is constantly being brought up as somebody who could come up here and play a very responsible two-way game. He's capable of scoring goals in Milwaukee. He's capable of playing different positions and taking face-offs, and just a real good all-around player. As he came up here, he was a black ace. He was on their crew and worked hard and had just kept a good positive attitude. And again, with the injuries that we sustained through the course of the playoffs, he got an opportunity to jump into the lineup, and what he did is unbelievable. To be a young kid to walk into the finals like that and be able to contribute offensively in the magnitude of the Stanley Cup Finals in Pittsburgh, in our building, speaks volume to him and his game and him and his as a person. It's not an easy thing to do for a young player. It could be very intimidating and very overwhelming, and it was not. He enjoyed it. He played great. He's going to come to camp next year, and he's going to try to earn a spot as well. But again, certainly now we've seen him in a different light up here and know that what he's capable of, and I think that changes our mindset about him as he approaches camp. He'll have to have a good summer and come here and work hard to make our team as well.
Peter, obviously, we look at how many people are outside on the plaza or how many sellouts this season there were, what the local TV ratings were, et cetera. But for the team, how did the fans and the fan support, not just during the playoffs but during the season, how did that help the team, and how important is that even going forward and turning the page into the coming seasons for the team? We
knew we had a special fan base for a couple of years, well, more than that. I've been here for a couple of years, and just the last couple of years, watching how excited they were about the playoff hockey 2 years ago, last year, and certainly this year, we know it's a special group of fans. As the playoffs grew this year, and it just became, I think that's what happens in the playoff, everything gets ramped up, the on-ice play, and certainly the fans and their passion get ramped up as the playoffs go on as well. I can promise you that every one of our players saw it, they knew it, they felt it, whether it was in the building, whether they had a TV on, 4 hours before a game or 3 hours before a game, and they're looking at Broadway and Luke Bryan playing up on the rooftop at Tootsie's, and the 100,000 people that were down there from being Preds fans and Music Fest, and the sea of gold that turned the corner at Rippey's, and our players 100% felt that. It was part of the fabric of our playoff run here. It would be crazy not to acknowledge the impact that our fans had and our city had on this run.
Anything else?
David, I think every year I've sat in here, I remember you in your opening statement sort of saying this is what has to be different moving forward. Given the success this year, you didn't necessarily say that up front. What's the challenge, though, of what you still need to do to make this team better, if anything? And kind of along those lines, Peter, is the biggest challenge as a coach that, as good as this season was, we haven't earned anything for 2017, 2018 yet?
Well, again, it's just a few days after, but I think Hockey Ops is dialed in and focused into what we need to do primarily in these next 3 weeks, kind of define what the majority of what your team is going to be, at least to start the season. I'm very confident of the group, everybody, our coaches, our Hockey Ops, and specifically our players. In the questions been asked to me before, can have a playoff hangover. I mean, a short off season. I just feel that our guys have learned so much in the last 2 years. I think they realize how difficult it is to get to this point. What's the saying? I mean, before you buy a house, you gotta go through it and check it all out. And I think now we know that last year we knew what it going to take to win the second round. This year we saw the Stanley Cup. The Stanley Cup was in our building. We were that close to it. I just think we got a really good group. I think they're mature. I think they know what has to take place. So it's going to be a new year next year, and you got to start all over. And you're going to hear me say the only goal is to make the playoffs, and then we'll go from there. But in terms of how I feel about our group and our chances, I'm very confident that we will do everything we can to try to get back to this spot next year.
I echo the same thing about the confidence in our group and the players that we have. I think it's a terrific group. I always work under the assumption we should never assume anything, and we should put our head down, come to training camp, work hard, do the right things, work to become a good team, work to win hockey games, and if you can do those things, you can find yourself competing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But there's always the work that goes with that. What we did this year and how we grew as a team, that team will have to take on its own identity next year, and we'll have to forge together to become a group that can win hockey games and do those things. So there's always work that has to be done, and I just think it's important that we focus on that when we get to training camp, and we should never assume anything. We should do the work instead.